Hello, friends. Hello, hello. Hope you are well and good on this beautiful sunny day. The temperature's all the way up to 45. It feels balmy these days that we should be have such embarrassingly warm weather. So I hope you're going to get out and get the chance to be in a little bit of sunshine today. Um, After a little bit of the bitterness of last week and some all that, I think it's a pretty nice respite. So, good morning, everybody. Hello, hello. Hope you're doing great. So, doing all right these days. Doing okay. Good to see you. Hope you're well and good and whole on this day. Give it a sec here for a few people to come along, find their way this morning. You're good, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hey, Jane, good morning to you. Hope you're doing all right. Hope everybody's having a good morning here. All right, let's get going this morning, friends. It is the 29th day of January. We are almost done with January. The 29th day of January here at 11:11 on this Wednesday. Glad you're with us. Glad you're a part of the journey. I pray that it's a good day for you. That there is numerous times about that these notions of whether you find it in the Gospel of John or you find it in Paul's letter to the church in Corinth, but again and again and again, there is this invitation to become one with God, right? I mean, we hear this idea that, and this kind of, we immediately think about this kind of big, heady, huge mystical experience, and where where our souls are swept away when this day of the Lord kind of moment, that you can find in John 14. In that day you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. Boy, this seems to get complicated really quick. And that that who's doing what to who, where are we, how does this all work? And this notion that that, or as Paul puts in the Corinthians, he who is joined to the Lord becomes one with spirit with him. It's such a beautiful notion, and I think often so lost on us in a way. Not that it's not true, but simply that we struggle to access that, right? Like, how do you get, you know, that I'm going to be one with Jesus, that my heart is going to be Jesus' heart, that the thoughts I think are going to be Jesus' thoughts, that it all seems a little bit much sometimes. So I want to tell you a story about something that I think is maybe a way that we can think about this differently. So there's this stuff called, besides I spent a number of years in the Army, and in the Army there is these small comforts that come along, particularly if you're in the field for a long time. So the Army, big Army units, they like to go train, or they like to go when they go to, because they're training to go to war, and they go to the field, meaning they leave their barracks and they go out and they train on maneuvers out in training areas in different places, or when they go to war, they are in the field, right? There's generally no barracks, and when you're at war, it is often incredibly intimate relationship with you and the ground, but for many of us, it was if you came into a mature theater like I did, yeah, it was actually a lot like, living in barracks in a lot of places and things like that. But there's but there's still this notion of kind of dealing with the basic privations of life, and whether particularly on, in my experience, on training exercises, but anywhere you go. And one of the things, for instance, we had in Iraq was often, there was the incredible generosity of the American people, of people who simply would send, little goodie snacks, little things, little treats. One of my favorite, there's this company out in Wyoming, and they would send the elk jerky, and and you wouldn't think it, but elk jerky was pretty awesome, and it actually was just great for being able to grab if we were traveling or something like that. I was like, oh, I got elk jerky, that's pretty good. And then there's other times I remember particularly this stuff, and when out on training exercises when it's cold and you're tired and you're beat down, or I've heard of other warriors, in other conflicts, like guys in Vietnam and other places, they would make stuff called ranger pudding, and basically what it is you'd come up with this little bit of that there were these different items that would come in a C ration in the Vietnam days, or in MREs in my day. There were these little cocoa packet, and then in the cocoa packet you might find a little coffee, and in the coffee you might find a few sugar packets, and so you could trade around and you could put this stuff together that would kind of almost like you could warm it up a little bit, and it would almost take this consistency of like a hot cocoa or a soft pudding, and there were times in which when it was so cold and so kind of gnarly and so uh, difficult, and being in just the physical privation of cold, wet, tired, those sorts of things, that somebody would kind of spark that up and they'd start making that up, and then maybe that canteen cup would just get passed around a little bit of this or even somebody'd make some for somebody that was feeling discouraged or something like that. There'd be this little act of kindness of making up some ranger pudding and giving it to somebody, or even if you just made it for yourself and you had this little sense of sugary kind of delicious treat in the middle of just being beat down. And I want to suggest to you that it's these little moments, these little, maybe little acts of kindness where you make up a little batch of ranger pudding for somebody. Maybe you're headed to a meeting and you bring snacks. Like my friend Robin, who's out in Michigan, she is famous for snack bringing. Like that's her. If she has a power, she is the queen of snack bringing, and which she will almost immediately downplay or talk down. But I want to suggest to you that first, the presentation of food is always one of the most core things. In fact, it's what our God does for us when He says, "Eat my bread, drink my blood." There's this way of saying, like, come and break bread with me, come be at table with me. So it's a very deep and big thing. But beyond that, when we talk about these big mystical ideas of John, he says, but the Father and I are one, or that who's joined in the Lord becomes one spirit with Him, as Paul says. We think about that, and as this needs to be some huge mystical event. But I want to suggest to you that it's actually much more basic, and much more simple, and much more much grittier and corporeal than that. That it's actually a part of it actually looks a lot more like offering somebody ranger pudding on a field problem in the middle of the night, in the dark, when everybody's hungry and thirsty and tired and beat down, and they just want to go back to the barracks and get a shower and sleep for 12 hours. That this opportunity to just make up a little bit of packet of cocoa, a little bit of this little one intentional act to show kindness to another human being. That, friends, is being one with the Spirit, with Him. We can dress it up as all this. We can dress it up as these mountaintop experiences of like, "Ooh," like we can fill ourselves filled with these ideas of philosophies and theologies, but honestly, it more often looks like bringing cookies to a meeting, to bringing snacks to a project, to make sure that the people around you are cared for and loved, and have a little bit of kindness. Now, does that transform our heart immediately? And now again, I get it. There's all kinds of reasons that you can bring cookies to a meeting, or you can make some ranger pudding because you want to encourage the guys around you so that they don't give up. You want to, you want to get something out. There's all this transactionalism that could be in it. But I just want to lift us up when we talk about that. But what I, particularly when I talk about ranger pudding, why I talk about that one in particular, other than the other thing, is because so often that act was just about caring about somebody else and encouraging them. There wasn't a whole lot of subterfuge in it, or a whole lot of ego in it. Like, oh, you can see me, I'm the guy who makes ranger pudding, and you get to, and you can now admire me for that. Like, it's not. It's really that simple and desirous act of kindness that makes us that makes us what? Well, it doesn't make us. It puts us in right relationship to the actual divine design of what we are, which is what Paul says. Paul asks the question of the Corinthians early on in the chapter, and he says, do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? Again, this can be big, heady, woo-woo stuff. But in the reality, it's actually as simple as a little bit of cocoa and sugar and creamer packets and maybe a little water warmed up, so that somebody in privation, somebody in tiredness, somebody in exhaustion that you care about and that you love actually gets a chance to feel a little bit of warmth, a little bit of comfort. And in that, yourself, your being has become a place for the Spirit of God, for the kindness of God to dwell in the world. That's not just that's not just a thing that we can do. That actually is who we are. That's not just an idea that we can have. That's just a notion. It's not just a philosophy. It is a true being that we can embody. It is a true oneness with God. That when we bring snacks, and we bring them really out of that sense of like, I just want this to be an act of joy. I don't need to look good for it. I don't need to have everybody do what I want them to do. I don't need to bribe everybody. I don't need to, all those things, that there are those moments. Now, there might be other moments when we do it half-baked. Get it? Cookies half-baked? See what I did there? And that's okay too. Like, because really, that's, sometimes you got to walk on different rocks to get across the river. Sometimes it's not always about doing it all the right way. But at its heart, when we talk about this, I want to suggest to you that these big, heady phrases of being one with God actually are a lot simpler and a lot more accessible and a lot more real than they ever may have been portrayed to us before. So I invite you today, go be one with Jesus. Go do some stupid little ranger pudding moment for somebody. Maybe do it for yourself if you're in a hole and you need some encouragement. Maybe you let somebody love you today that just desperately needs that. That maybe you put yourself in a place where you can receive some kindness. Because really, do you not know that you are God's temple and God's Spirit dwells in you? Peace and grace to you, my friends. We'll pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11.